In this lesson, we're going to be talking about percent of error, percent of change, and just applications of percents. So let's talk about what percent means first. The word percent, well, let's break it down. Let's look at the cent part first. So if you think about the word cent on its own, there are 100 cents in a dollar, right? There are also 100 years in a century, right? So we start to relate this prefix or suffix, cent, with the number 100. Percent is no different. Percent just means per 100. So if someone says there's, a 45% chance of something happening, that means 45 times out of 100, right? Another way we can think of this is that percent means the same thing as hundredths, right? So if I say, again, 45%, you can write that as, or say that as 45 hundredths. Percent and hundredths are synonyms, which means two words that have the same meaning, right? I could also write it as a decimal. 45%, 45 hundredths, I could write it as 45 hundredths, right? This is also another way to write 45 hundredths. So just keep in mind that percent and hundredths mean the same thing. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is that when we are finding a fraction or a percent or a decimal part of something, we're going to use multiplication to find that. So let me show you an example. If I asked you to find half of, let's say, 20, right? Half of 20 is 10, right? You know that because 20 divided by 2 is 10. So if I asked you to find half of 20, in order to find half of 20, and I'm going to put 20 over 1, you can almost see just from lining it up like this, that would be 1/2 times 20, right? Because that would give you 20 over 2, which is 10. So when you're asked to find a percent or a fraction or a decimal part of a number, you're going to use multiplication. Okay, so keep those two things in mind. Percent is the same thing as hundredths, and when we want to find a percent, decimal, or fraction of something, we multiply. All right, let's do it. So Alton estimated that 260 people attended the band concert. The actual count for attendance was 200 people. Find the percent of error. To find the percent of error, we're going to follow a formula. And that formula is the difference divided by the actual amounts. Because whenever there's error, you're always going to have an estimation and then the actual calculation or the actual measurement. So difference is a word that we use for subtraction, right? So I'm going to subtract 260 minus 200. That number is going to go on top. On the bottom is the actual count, which was 200. All right, so that's going to give me 60 over 200. Now, remember, I need the percent, right? So I have some options here. I can do top divided by bottom. Actually, let me show that method. I can do 60 divided by 200. And I'm going to predict that that's going to come out to be 0.3. And I'll show you why I make that prediction. But on your calculator, you would type in 60 divided by 200, top divided by bottom. And if I need this to be a percent, remember, percent is hundredths, right? So if I carry this, I extend this number to the hundredths place, it's 30 hundredths, which is 30%, because hundredths and percent mean the same thing. The other way you could do this would be 60 over 200 is the same as 30 over 100. And 30 hundredths is 30%. Right? So either way, whether you just did it on your calculator, top number divided by bottom, or you decided to write an equivalent fraction that has 100 on the bottom, you still come out to the same answer of 30%. All right, but this is the main takeaway from this problem, is to find percent of error, we're doing difference over actual. All right. For this one, we have an electric toothbrush that costs $69, and that includes a 50% price markup. So, just for reference, when you buy something at full price, you are paying 100% of the price, right? And there's no discount, there's no markup, it's just you're paying the full price. You are paying 100%. In this situation, the price that we're paying, it says it includes a 50% markup. So not only are we paying 100% of the price, we're paying an extra 50% markup. That means we are paying 150% of the price, or the cost for the store to purchase it, right? 150%, because we're paying the full 100% of what the product costs plus a 50% markup, because the store's got to make its money somehow, right? So remember I said at the beginning, whenever we're finding a percent, decimal, or fraction of something, we're going to multiply, right? So in order to use this in a calculation, we need to write it as a decimal. Now this may be a little tricky because it's over 100%, but think about it. 50% is 0.5, right? 100% is 1. So 150% is going to be 1.5. If you're not sure or you didn't follow that, another way you could do it is 150% means 150 hundredths, right? Remember, percent and hundredths mean the same thing. So when in doubt, just put the percent over 100. Then we can divide. On your calculator, you can do 150 divided by 100, and that's another way to convert 150% to a decimal. Okay, so our decimal of 150% is 1.5. Now, we're finding 1.5, or 150%, of something we don't know. So we already talked about that we have to multiply, right? So 150% of something, we have to do 1.5 times something, but we don't know what that something is. So we're going to use a variable. Welcome back, equations. And then we know that this 150% markup, like the total price including the markup, is $69. So we've got a one-step equation to solve. Yay! The x is being multiplied by 1.5, so to undo that, we divide. So we get that x equals, I'm going to use my calculator, 69 divided by 1.5 is 46. So the store paid $46 for this toothbrush, then added a 50% markup and sold it to you for $69. That's how they make their money. If you want to check it out, make sure that's right. We know that this is 100% of the price, right? 50% of that would be half, which would be $23. And when you add those together, it does equal 69. So that would just be, you know, if you wanted to just check, right? You don't have to do that check, but it does check out. Oh, so the final answer would be $46. Okay. Oliver borrowed $2,000 to purchase a riding lawnmower for his lawn care business. The bank offered him an interest rate of 13% for 9 months. Calculate the simple interest using I equals PRT. All right, so I equals PRT. In order to use this formula, we need to know what everything stands for. So the I is interest, right? That's the amount of money that we're going to pay in interest. The P stands for the word principal, which means your starting amount. So I'll put starting money. The R is your rates, but this is important, as a decimal, right? So we have to write the rate as a decimal when we put it in there. And T is the time, but again, this is also important, in years. Not in months, the way they gave it to us in this problem. So the good news is we're just going to plug everything into the formula and then do it on our calculator. So we don't know what I is. That's what they're asking us to find. Calculate the simple interest. So I'm going to write I equals P. P is our starting amount of money. And that's this amount right here, this $2,000. So I'm going to put 2,000. And then I need to multiply by R and by T. So R is my rate as a decimal. 13% is 13 hundredths, which is 0.13. So that's my rate. And then the last thing that gets plugged in is time in years. Now they gave me 9 months. Well, how would I write that in years? Well, 9 months out of 12, I could reduce that, would be 3/4 of the year. If you know your common fractions, you know the decimal for that. If you don't, then you can just do 3 divided by 4. It's 0.75. That is 9 months in years because it's 9 out of the 12 months. It's a fraction of a year. So I'm going to do 2,000 times 0.13 times 0.75, and I get that the interest is $195. Now be careful on these interest questions because sometimes they ask you for just the interest and sometimes they ask you for the full amount that has to be paid back, which would be the 2,000 plus the 195. Okay, in this problem they're just asking for the interest. All right. Laura's phone records. Oh, Laura's phone records data for screen time each week. Last week she used 920 minutes. This week she used 690 screen time minutes on the phone. Calculate the percent decrease. Okay. So this is very similar to the first problem we did, which was percent of error. So we're going to still have the difference on the top, but on the bottom, instead of actual, we're going to have the original. right? Because we're going to have one original measurement and then a new second measurement, right? So we're always going to do the difference on top and then the original measurement on the bottom. So on top, I've got 920 minus 690, and on the bottom, originally, she used 920. All right, now some of you are like, oh, can I just cross those out? No. We're not multiplying on top. We have to do the subtraction first. So no, you cannot cross those out because that's not actually a 920 up there. It's a 920 minus 690. We have to do that first. So 920 minus 690 is 230. So I'm going to continue down here. I get 230 over 920. And we're pretty much done, but we need this as a percent, right? So now we're just converting fraction to decimal to percent. So let's make it a decimal first. We're going to divide. 230 is already on my calculator, so I'm going to divide that by 920, and I get 0.25. If I say the proper name of that decimal, it would be 25 hundredths. Hundredths means the same thing as percent. So this is 25%. Now, some students like to memorize rules, find it helpful. If that's your situation, if you want to have a rule to memorize, when we go from decimal to percent, we move the decimal 2 places to the right. So you can see we went 1, 2, right? When we go from percent back to decimal, we move it 2 places to the left. So if I were converting this back to a decimal, I would go 1, 2. All right? So D comes before P alphabetically, so that's how you know which one to write first, or how you can remember which one to write first. D to P, 2 places to the right, P back to D, 2 places to the left. I think it's easier just to remember that percent and hundredths mean the same thing, but if rules are your thing, go for it. All right. A karaoke machine regularly costs $138 and it's on sale for 15% off. What's the discount? So 15% off. All right, that's not too bad. It's a pretty good sale. So to take 15% off, we first need to know how much is 15% of the price, right? So we want to find 15% of 138. All right, so 15% of 138, we're going to convert that percent to a decimal. 15% is the same as 15 hundredths. When we're finding a percent of something, we multiply, and we're going to multiply by 138. Right, so 15% of 138 means 15 hundredths times 138. So I'm going to do that here. 0.15 times 138 equals 20.7. That's the discount. I get to take off, but I wouldn't say 20.7, right? You wouldn't say $20.7. So to make it money, we add that 0 so it goes to the hundredths place. $20.70 off. Now, just like the other question, be careful with these discount questions. Sometimes they want to know what's the amount of the discount. Sometimes they want to know what's the final price, which means you would have to take that 138 and take off the $20.70. All right, but in this problem, it just says what's the discount. That's the discount, $20.70. All right, the cost of a meal for a family of 4 is $86. They have a 20% off coupon. Calculate the new price. Okay, so in order to take off 20%, I have to know what 20% is. So I'm going to find 20% of 86. right? 20% of 86. So that means I'm going to do 20% as a decimal times 86. Let's see what that equals. So 86 times 0.2 is $17.20. Right? It's actually 17.2. But that's the amount of my discount. That's how much I get to take off because of my coupon. So now I'm going to have 86 minus my discount amount. So I'm going to do 86 minus that on my calculator, and I get $68.80. Now, I'm going to show you a second way to do this. All right? Stick with me on this one. If I'm taking 20% off, right? Remember we talked about full price would be 100%. So 100% minus the 20% off would leave me paying 80%. Right? If I take 20% off, I have to pay the remaining 80%. So then what if I just find 80% of 86? What would that equal? Well, that would be 80 hundredths times 86, and guess what? It's 68.80. So I got to the same answer. In method number 1, I multiplied to find the amount of discount and then I subtracted that. In method number 2, I subtracted first, right? Took off the 20% and then multiplied by the remaining percent. All right? Either way, you're going to get the same answer. All right, so let's look at the second part. Now we're going to calculate a 15% tip and then add that on to get the final cost. Okay, so we need to find 15% of our new amount, which is $68.80. Okay, I'm going to slide down here so I have some more room. So anytime we're finding a percent of a number, we're going to make it a decimal, right? 15% is 15 hundredths, and multiply. Let's see what that equals. So 0.15 times 68.8 equals $10.32. And now that's the tip, so I have to add it on. So 68.80 plus my tip is going to be, so plus 68.8, $79.12. And guess what? We can do the same thing with the other method. If I'm going to pay 100% of my meal plus 15%, that means I am paying 100% plus 15%, which is 115%. So 115% is 115 hundredths, and that's 1.15. 1.15 times 68.80 is $79.12. Now, the only time you would not want to use the second method is if it's asking you specifically to find the amount of the tip. If part of the question says, find the tip, like it does say here, it says calculate a 15% tip, right? So that's asking how much is the tip. So you would need this step, $10.32, to then add on to your meal price, right? But if it just says what's the total cost, method 2 is a little bit shorter, right? So let me just review method 2 again. So for method 2, first I took off the 20%, which left me paying 80%. So I just did 80% times the cost. Then I wanted to add a 15% tip, so I found 115% multiplied and got my final total. All right, if you don't understand method 2, it's okay. You can always do it the way that I did in method 1, which is to find the percent of the amount and then take that off. Find the percent of the amount and then add that on. You'll get the same answer either way. All right, as always, any questions, let me know. Talk to you soon.